on. After 20 years together, she simply walked out of my life. She packed her things and left as if 20 years together meant nothing. What the hell? For 20 years we lived and loved each other. When times get tough, she packed her things and left. Somehow, I didn't really blame her. These were the people she interacted with. I tried to tell her, but she knew better. Well, the hard times passed, as always, and guess who showed up in my life again? Yes, she crawled back. Her clothes were all worn out. She had lost too much weight and looked terrible. Like an idiot, I felt sorry for her and took her back. God, what an ass I was, or maybe deep down I still loved her. I took her to the hospital to be examined. She was immediately put on enrollment 4. They put it in order and tried to put it back together as best they could. She still didn't look healthy, but her face, that beautiful face, was still there. And when she saw me, she smiled that smile that melted my heart 20 years ago. The hospital discharged her after a week, and I took her home. Over the months, I put it back together. I pushed her to eat healthy, quit smoking, and take care of herself. 6 months later, she was again as beautiful as before. That's when we made love for the first time. It was just as wonderful as in the first days of our acquaintance. I don't have words to describe how beautiful she was, but I felt so lucky to have a wife like her. Until she left, after which she was still as beautiful as before, but I don't think I loved her that much, only time will tell. I still loved her, but not as much as before she left. At least for now. She could win my heart again if she wanted. A year after her return, it seemed like she was really trying to win my love back. Of course, I never let her forget that she left me when we fought and argued. She hated that I kept bringing it up, and I think that's why I did it. This quickly stopped all disputes. About 18 months after her return, she was back to her normal weight and was in good spirits again. She was happy, and all our little fights stopped. She simply agreed with everything I wanted. Our sex life is back to normal. Well, as normal as a 40-year-old can be. And then on Friday afternoon in my office, I received an envelope from the courier service. I opened it and a micro SD card spilled out onto my desk. 32-gigabyte card. No note, no nothing. Only a map. I shook my head. I took the adapter and plugged it into the USB port. File Explorer opened. On the tiny card, there was one huge MP4 file of 18 gigabytes and about 100 JPEG files. The file names gave no clue as to what they might contain or where they came from. I clicked on the first JPEG file. His name was 10,001 JPG. What appeared on the screen took my breath away. It was a photograph of my wife, naked, standing, and looking at the camera. She looked great. I closed the file and clicked on Next. I almost fell out of my chair. There was Judy, my wife, pleasuring some black guy. Jealousy, anger, betrayal hit me in the stomach. I was just looking at the photo. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I shook my head and closed the photo. I clicked on the photo in the middle of the list. She showed Judy having sex with a black guy. She enjoyed what was being done to her. I closed the photo and clicked on the video. It took a long time to load. There was a bed in the center of the frame. The light was dim, then slowly became brighter until all the shadows disappeared. Then Judy walked into the frame, naked. She crawled onto the bed and lay down, looking at the camera. She started talking. I turned up the volume on the speakers. She spoke incoherently, making no sense. I looked at her eyes. She was under the influence of drugs. I warned her about this shit. I know the people she was hanging out with when she left were smoking that stuff. After about 5 minutes of her chatting, 3 naked black guys crawled onto the bed. She was glad to see them. My throat was tight with anger, betrayal, and jealousy. Love was out there somewhere, but it seemed like it was dying. I touched my face. It was wet with tears. I closed the film. I took the SD card out of the machine. I was going to throw it in the trash, but instead I put it back in the envelope and put it in a desk drawer that could be locked. Then I sat back and cried. After half an hour, I stopped and just sat there, thinking. I pulled out the SD card again and inserted it into the computer. I opened the list of files. Looking at the creation date, I saw that it was about a month after she left. Okay, that explains a few things. Not what she did, but who she was with, but why did they send it to me? There was no return address on the envelope and no sender information on the courier receipt. I was stumped. I didn't know any of the men in the photographs or in the film. I selected a few photos and printed them out. I put them in my briefcase. I put the SD card back in the drawer and locked it. I took my briefcase and told my boss that I was going home because I wasn't feeling well. On the way home, I called Judy and told her I was on my way. She sounded happy to hear that I was coming back early. I didn't know how long it would last when I got home. When I walked in the front door, she was standing there naked. "What is this?" I asked. "I thought I would greet you like this from now on." "Don't you like it?" she asked. "Yes, I think I like it." I took the drink from her hand, walked around her, and went into the living room. "What the hell?" she said hoarsely and followed me. I just put my briefcase down, took a sip of bourbon and ice, walked around her again, and went upstairs to change. When she got up and saw me undressing, she jumped on the bed and lay down ready for sex. I looked at her, frowned, took another sip of bourbon, and put the glass on the dresser. I pulled a t-shirt and shorts out of my drawer, put them on, grabbed my drink, and walked back into the living room. "What?" she screamed. I heard her feet stomping down the stairs as I sat down in my chair. Having finished drinking, I turned to face her. I grabbed her hand, slammed the empty glass into her hand, and turned back to face my desk. She poured ice on my head, threw the glass on the table, and walked out in a huff. I knew I'd pay for it later, but I was still furious with what I saw on the SD card. Tonight, she might just go to hell. I wasn't going to let her leave the house. I just started surfing the net on my computer. About an hour later, she came downstairs, all dressed and smart. She stood behind me, tapping her right foot. "Where are the car keys?" she asked softly. I ignored her. "Where are the car keys?" she asked louder. "In my briefcase," I said. She snorted, picked up the case, walked to the other side of the table, set it down, and opened it. There were photographs I had printed there. I heard her sigh. She took a step back, as if she had been hit in the chest. "Where?" She didn't finish as she fell to her knees. "I wonder who it is. Today at work, I received a package from a courier. Inside was an SD card with these and a bunch of other photos. It also had about 3 hours of video of you. Do you know anything about this?" "Damn," she whispered, covering her mouth with her hands. "Who, dear? Who sent me this? I would like to thank him for warning me about your infidelity. It looks like you loved every moment of it. Look at your smile in this photo," I shouted in the last sentence. "Oh shit," she whispered again, covering her face with her hands. I turned to her in my chair. I lifted her chin to look into her eyes. They were full of tears, but I didn't care. I wanted to see her face. "So tell me all about it," I ordered her. She took a deep breath, then opened her mouth and screamed. She fell to the floor, covering her face and head. I just watched her son. I threw another photo in front of her. He grabbed her by the hair and pulled her head up until it was in front of her face. She screamed again as she looked at the photo. "Please, that's enough, no more. I have 10 more photos that I want to show you. I especially like this one, where you're with two at once. Look," I shouted, pulling her head towards the photograph again. She just sobbed while I held her head. "No more, please," she begged. "Then tell me all about it," I shouted. "I can't." "Of course you can. All this happened before you got sick. Or was it all the drugs you were taking?" In most of the photos I'd seen so far, she looked so stoned that she probably wouldn't remember her name when she came to. I'll try, but I don't remember much." I waved my hand in front of her face to silence her. I collected the photos on the floor and grabbed her hair again. A good start. Still holding her by the hair, I stood up and began to drag her. She screamed, then stood up and followed me upstairs to the bedroom. The photographs were in my hand. I threw them on the bed. I grabbed her dress. This was the one I just bought for her. I tore it on her. She screamed in pain as the fabric cut into her skin. At that moment, I didn't care. She wasn't even wearing panties. I tore off her bra. Only stockings and a belt remained. Creature. Bitch, I shouted at her. No, I'm not like that, she shouted back. You're dressed like one of them, and I have the pictures to prove it, I shouted back. She fell to her knees again and began to sob. I pulled her to her feet. She resisted. I hit her in the face, not hard, but it hurt. Stop it, she screamed. I hit her again. She looked at me with hatred in her eyes. Now, maybe I'll get something from her. I roughly pulled her to her feet. While she was standing, I pushed her and she fell on the bed, in the photo where she was brutally fucked. She just lay there, crying. Why the hell are you crying? I shouted. She didn't answer. She covered her head with her hands. I just stood there, looking at her. I made a decision. I undressed. She didn't move. I fucked her roughly. I brought her a wet rag and threw it on her face. Clean yourself up, bitch, I told her. Don't call me. What? Creature bitch? Fucking bitch? I've never called her those words before. This was the first time. I'm so sorry. I love you so much. Of course you do. So much so that you went off and started having sex with niggas, 2 or 3 at a time. What the hell were you thinking, bitch? She just kept crying, cleaning herself up. She got up and went to the bathroom. After a while, I heard the shower turn on. I went in and joined her. I also needed a shower after having sex with a bitch like her. She took the soap and started washing me. It was nice. I stood under the running water and washed off the soap. I took the soap from her and started washing her. I wasn't gentle with her. She stood there, accepting everything I did. I handled her breasts roughly. I took a towel and wiped her roughly. I handed her the towel and she dried me off gently. She tried to kiss me. I turned my head away and she kissed me on the cheek. I pulled away and went to bed. I crawled under the covers and turned off my night light. Judy climbed in and pulled the blanket over her side, turning off her night light. Only the overhead light remained. Well, creature, turn off the damn light, I said. She threw off the blanket, stood up, and turned off the light. She returned to bed and pulled the blanket over herself. I heard her cry quietly. Good night, she said. I love you. Good night, I replied. No, you do not love. I felt her flinch when I said that. Somewhere in the middle of the night, she crawled up to me and hugged me. I didn't push her away, but I didn't answer her either. I think she cried all night. When I woke up the next morning, she was fast asleep. Her arm was thrown across my body. I smiled, looking at her calm, beautiful face. My anger slowly boiled over. My hatred is almost gone. I still didn't know what to do. It was Saturday morning. I wasn't going to work. I didn't have to go to work. I had no idea what to do with her. When I thought about what she did, I felt bad. Not bad enough to throw up, but almost. I carefully slipped out from under her hand and went to make coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, wondering what to do, when she came downstairs. She was still naked. I put on shorts and a t-shirt. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down opposite me. She took the part of the newspaper that I had already read and began to read. We didn't talk for a long time. What should I do with you? I asked her. I don't know. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? She asked. I don't know. Why did you do what you did? Why did you leave? Why did you take the drugs? Why did you have sex with all these black guys? Maybe when you answer these questions, I can start to forgive you. I got up and went to the living room. I sat down in front of my computer with my head in my hands. My briefcase was still open. There was only one last intimate photograph left in it. I groaned. Then I heard her come in and stand behind me. She put her hands on my shoulders. Her body shook. She must have seen that last photo. Oh God, no, she whispered. Her hands shook on my shoulders. Do you want to tell me about it? I asked softly. I can't. I don't remember. I see a photo like this, and my brain shows me what I did before and after, but not why. I don't know why I did what I did. You know, I talked to the lady. You told me about this bitch. You said that you shouldn't communicate with her. I didn't listen to you. I didn't listen to anyone. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I'm so sorry for what I did, she said, pointing to the photo in my briefcase. I was so stoned the whole time that I couldn't think clearly, and the lady continued to give me drugs. I lived on coffee, cigarettes, and substances. When they stopped giving me this, I woke up and saw myself in a puddle on some street. I looked terrible. That's when I went looking for you. I met PJ. He drove me home. To your house. I told him to leave. He was going to walk me to the door, but I said I could handle it. I've always been stubborn. I rang the doorbell, knocked on the door. You did not answer. I started crying. I must have fainted. I remember waking up from the noise. I opened my eyes, and there you were. I was delighted, but I couldn't move or speak. You took me to the hospital. When you did this, I realized that you still love me. I love you so much for taking care of me. I promise I will never, ever leave you again. I looked at her. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. I shook my head and rubbed my face with my hands. Judy, you have to try to remember why you left, otherwise I'll never be able to get over this. I can't forgive you for what you did to the black guys, but I can try not to think about it, knowing that you were under the influence of the drugs they gave you. But I need to know why you left. Was it because of something I did? Was it because of someone else and I ignored it? What? Why did you leave me? I almost cried. Tears welled up in my eyes. I looked at Judy, and she was crying too. I can't remember. Honestly, I don't know if it was because of you or someone else. I was on drugs even then. There were times when I didn't remember where I lived. The lady took me home, brought me to the door. Then she left. I knew how to open the door and go to bed. You were there when I went to bed. I was so tired that I just went to bed without saying a word, she said. I remember those nights. I was waiting for you to say good night, but you didn't. I was so sad that I just sat in front of my computer, surfing the net. I ignored you like you ignored me. I knew you were using, but you were an adult, and I left you alone. I should have spanked you. That's what I should have done. No, in my condition, it would only make me angry. I remember that you were angry, but I needed a new thrill, so I went looking for the lady. She gave me everything she had so that I could get high and feel good. Oh God, I'm so sorry, she said. She was on her knees, looking up at me. Tears streamed down her face. I started to reach out my hand to comfort her, but my eyes fell again on the photo in my briefcase. I pulled my hand away, closed my eyes, and shook my head. I sat with my elbows on the table, my head in my hands, my eyes closed, sobbing. I heard Judy move. She came closer and placed her head on my lap, kneeling. I looked down at her face. God, she was so beautiful, even when she cried. I had a headache. I looked at my watch. It wasn't even 10 in the morning. I wanted to drink, but it was too early to start this matter. Satisfy me, I said. Judy looked at me. She didn't smile or frown. She nodded once. She reached up to pull my shorts off. I heard her little son as she rose to her feet and went to the bathroom to clean herself. I sat down again. I closed my briefcase. I sat there with my head in my hands, wondering what I should do with it. I really needed to know why she left. The rest happened in a drug frenzy. Although she took it voluntarily, I thought I could forgive her. I will never forget, but I think I can find the strength to forgive her. Will I be able to trust her? Not soon. I heard her return. When I looked up, she was kneeling next to me. I shook my head. She frowned. Get up and sit on the chair, I told her. She smiled slightly as she rose to her feet. She pulled up another office chair and sat quietly, watching me. I put my head in my hands again, and my head started to hurt again. Do you want to put on your shorts? She asked quietly. No, thank you, I replied quietly. She was still naked. I just sat there thinking and listening to her breathing. Dawn, she asked quietly. Yes, I replied. Are you going to divorce me? Her voice trembled. I do not know yet. I have a headache. I'll go upstairs and lie down, clean the house, and then wake me up. Of course expensive. I love you. The way you keep talking, I said, leaving the office and going up the stairs. I heard her last sob before I closed the bedroom door and lay down, closing my eyes. Lying there, I saw all the photographs and the part of the video that I managed to watch. I couldn't get them out of my head. I tried and tried to think of something else, but to no avail. I saw her beautiful face smiling at the camera every time I tried to understand how she could do this to me. Of course, when I looked at her in my imagination, she was in a frenzy of euphoria. She probably didn't know what was going on. Eventually, I fell asleep. Judy. He hit me in the heart again. Of course, I deserved every blow. What the hell was I thinking? Why did I let my guard down so easily? Why did I listen to this lying, two-faced bitch who called herself my friend? I sat there crying for half an hour. My head hurt badly, but my heart hurt even more. I loved him so much that I couldn't do enough for him even before I left. But I couldn't remember why I left. I racked my brains, but couldn't think of a single reason why I would leave. I just remembered that I was always high and nothing else mattered except staying that way. Yes, we had difficult times, but that was not a reason to leave him. We've been in worse situations and got through it together. We loved each other. But apparently I ruined it all. Every time he said anything other than, "I love you," it cut me to the bone. My heart hurt so much that I could hardly breathe. And no, it was not a heart attack. It was mental suffering from the loss of his love for me. I caused this loss myself. I could only imagine how his heart felt when he found out about my betrayal. I was surprised that he didn't kick me out, leaving me with only my clothes on and a tenner in my pocket. I knew he had withdrawn money from our joint account. I remember how angry I was with him then. But this anger disappeared with the next injection or something I took. I sat for a little longer, then got up and started cleaning the house. It helped me not to think about anything. I didn't want to think about anything right now. My husband of 20 years was very, very angry with me. I was cleaning a house that really wasn't that dirty. Dawn was always a good housekeeper when I didn't feel well enough to clean. It wasn't that common, but most husbands would just leave everything and let the wife do all the work later when she felt better. I was so grateful when I found Dawn. I went through a terrible divorce and felt terrible. Then a neighbor introduced me to Dawn. I fell in love with him in the first month. I didn't know how he felt until the next month when this stupid guy got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I cried so hard that I couldn't answer him for an hour. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I hugged him tightly for a long time. When I finished cleaning, I sat down in the living room and started crying again. I could see my life with him coming to an end in a few months or even weeks, and nothing could be done if I didn't remember why I left. We were living in a nice house when the problem started. Don lost his job because of the economy. I was still working, at least for a while. When Don couldn't find another job right away, we exhausted our savings but still lost our house. We sold it and made about $100. The market was so soft that we held a fire sale to avoid losing credit. We moved into a long-term hotel in a very bad part of the city. Don tried to tell me that everyone I meet will only care about themselves, no matter what they tell me. Then I met Lady. She was a part-time easy girl, a part-time dealer, and a part-time con artist. This is what Don said about her when he met her. Don was good at recognizing people quickly. I think he learned this when he was a police officer. This was another sad period in my life. Not all the time, but only those moments when he was sent abroad, and I could not go with him. I worked at the base, and when he wasn't there, a lot of guys would hit on me until they found out he was a cop. All I had to do was call Don's best friend, and he would deal with any annoying guy. Danny and his wife Belinda were two of the most wonderful people I knew at the time. I still miss them. I was very tired and went upstairs and climbed into bed with Dawn. I immediately fell asleep. Judy. I woke up to the darkness and the smell of cooking food. I was hungry. I got out of bed and went downstairs. Don was in the kitchen, cooking. He was an excellent cook, and when I couldn't cook, he always prepared something delicious. I stopped in the doorway, watching him. He saw me. He nodded and pointed to the kitchen table. I saw two covered places. She carefully went and sat down in her usual place at the table. Don watched me. I was still naked. He got dressed again. Shorts and t-shirt. I had never liked walking around the house naked before, but now I felt a freedom that I had never felt before. I didn't know what Don thought about it, but he didn't say anything about my nakedness. He was cooking something simple: scrambled eggs and fried potatoes with sausage and biscuits. It smelled so delicious it made my mouth water. Don took my plate and put the food on it. When he placed it in front of me, I smiled. "Thank you, dear," I said. "Please, bitch," he said quietly. I swallowed my pride once more and simply snorted. It was like a knife in the heart. I sobbed as I looked at the food, no longer feeling hungry. But somewhere inside, I felt an excitement that I had never felt before. I shuddered from my thoughts. I mechanically started eating. I couldn't taste what came into my mouth. When I finished, I sat watching Don. He ate without looking at me. When he finished, he pushed his plate away, stood up, and looked at me before walking away. "Clean up after yourself, bitch," he said. I almost choked on my orange juice. I felt another prick in my heart, but I also felt excited in my lower abdomen. I sat wondering what was happening to me. Tears flowed down my cheeks again. It looked like I was about to run out of tears. I sat there for a little while longer, not thinking about anything. Then she got up and started cleaning up after Don. He was a good cook, but he always left a mess when he cooked, although he usually cleaned up after himself. I assumed that some things had to change because of what I did. I should be mad at him for what he calls me now, but I knew I had screwed up so badly that he should kick me out and never speak to me again. I hoped that his behavior now was his way of giving me a second, third, fourth chance. How many times have I hurt him without knowing it? How many times has he hurt me without knowing it? I could count the number of times he hurt me on one hand. Once, he forgot my birthday. He confused it with his ex-girlfriend's birthday. It took me a long time to forgive him for that, but I don't think he even noticed that I was angry. He corrected himself immediately, so it was nothing to him. As far as I know, he never cheated on me, which was surprising in our time with revealing outfits and arrogant, vulgar makeup. Although, if he cheated on me while I was away, I would not hold it against him ever. In fact, if he went out and had sex with someone today, I wouldn't hold it against him. Of course, I wasn't going to tell him about it. But if he figured it out on his own, I'd hope he'd have a good time. No, honestly, I would hope so. I just hoped I could stay with him. Even if he starts cheating on me, if I can be with him at least sometimes, I will be delighted. When I finished cleaning, I went to look for him. He was in his office, at the computer. The chair I was sitting on was still in place. His briefcase was closed. He was doing some searching. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't think I needed to know. I entered the office and sat down on the chair next to him. He looked at me, frowned for a second, then smiled. I tried to keep my face straight. No smile, no frown. I just looked at him, not at the computer screen. It was none of my business what he was looking for there. In addition, out of the corner of my eye, I saw that he was reading some stories. After about half an hour, he turned off the computer, stood up and took my hand, helping me stand up. He led me upstairs to the bedroom. He pushed me onto the bed. The photographs were still there. I didn't clean the bedroom because he was sleeping, and then I fell asleep. I stood for a long time and looked at myself in these photographs and could not remember why I did what I did. I remembered having sex, but not why. Don undressed, climbed into bed, turned me over on my back, and began to have sex with me. He didn't make love, he had me like the last creature, and I liked it, and I didn't understand why. The shower calmed me down. I dried myself off and went to look for him. He was in the office again. I just sat at my desk, crying. I felt so sorry for him, but I knew he didn't want to hear my apology. I just stood there, as quietly as I could. I don't think he noticed me. He stopped crying and picked up the phone. I dialed the number. "Peggy, this is Dawn. I need to talk to someone." "Sure, in an hour." "Okay, see you then." "Where?" "Okay, I got it. See you." He hung up, and I wondered who Peggy was. I started to walk away from the office, but stopped when I heard his voice. "Wear a nice summer dress. No panties, no bra, no stockings. Just sandals." Okay, I said and went upstairs. Looks like I'll get to see who Peggy is. I chose my most beautiful summer dress. It was dark yellow, like sunflowers. I got dressed in seconds. I went into the bathroom to brush my hair and put on some makeup when Don saw me. No makeup, bitch, he told me. My heart ached again from this word. Okay, I said, going downstairs to wait for him. I stood in the center of the living room. I was waiting. He came down wearing nice trousers and a button-down shirt. The trousers were blue and the shirt was light gray. He looked great. I would be very happy to be with him if we went out in public. He took my hand and led me to the garage door. He even opened the passenger door for me. I was very happy, but I tried not to show it. He got behind the wheel, started the car, opened the garage door, and drove out. It took us an hour to get to a small shopping center that I had never been to before. He parked next to the bar. When he turned off the machine, he took out a 20 and handed it to me. Go to the bar, get yourself a drink. Sit at the bar and wait for me. What? What did he just say? Don't say a word. Just go, he ordered. My mind was racing as I opened the door and walked out. I looked back at him, and he simply waved his hand towards the bar. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But I just turned around and walked towards the entrance of the bar. When I opened the door, I heard our car drive away. I walked into the bar, praying that Don would come back for me. I prayed for him to come back as I sat down on the bar stool. There weren't many people in the bar at this time of day. "What should I pour you, miss?" asked the bartender. "Virgin Mary," I answered. He nodded and went to cook. "I worked in a bar not long ago. He brought me a drink." "$3.50, he said. I threw a 20 on the bar, he took it and brought me the change. I sat drinking tomato juice, wondering how long I would have to stay here. Done. I just dropped Judy off at the bar. Why? I did not know. I was meeting an old high school friend on the other side of the mall, and I didn't want Judy around while I was talking to her. Peggy stood at the entrance to the store she was talking about. I pulled up next to her, rolled down the passenger window, and looked at her. "Can you give me a lift, madam?" I said, smiling. "Madam? Did you call me madam?" she shouted, laughing. She walked to the car and got inside. I drove off and parked in the middle of the lot. I turned off the car and opened the window. It was a beautiful day. "So, what's the problem, buddy?" asked Peggy. I hung my head, trying to figure out where to start my story. Then she hugged me, and when I turned my head to look at her, she kissed me hard and with tongue. I kissed her back. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I liked it. Very. When we pulled away from each other, we both sighed. "Wow, it was. Very nice," I said. Peggy smiled and took my hand in hers. "I've always wanted to do this. There's something else I want to do with you, but that can wait." "What is the problem?" she asked again. "Judy." "What did she do this time?" asked Peggy. This wasn't the first time I'd talked to her about my wife, and if Judy had known, I would have been in trouble. Peggy and I were just friends. Not friends with benefits, although judging by what had just happened, she wanted some benefits. About 3 years ago, she left me. "What? And you didn't call me then?" I looked at her and started again. "About 3 years ago, she left me. She didn't say why. She didn't say where she was going. She never called. I didn't see her until 18 months ago. She was on a drinking binge. Drugs, alcohol, who knows what else. I took her to the hospital, cleaned her up, and we were together again. I was happy. She was more than happy. She couldn't do enough for me. We had more sex after she recovered than in my entire life. And then last Friday, I received an anonymous package. It contained an SD card. There were these photos on the SD card," I said, pulling them out of the central glove compartment. Peggy took them and sighed, shocked by what she saw. "Oh God, Don, I'm so sorry," she said, choking up. "Thank you. If you look at her eyes, she's so stoned she probably doesn't know her name." There was also a video on the SD card. In it, she thinks she speaks coherently, but it was complete nonsense. She was so stoned that she couldn't even speak. So I think I can forgive her for what she does in the photos and videos. But I can't forgive her for leaving and putting herself in this situation without telling me why she left. You really love her with all your heart, don't you? Peggy asked the question to which I had no answer. I don't know. About. So you're saying you could just leave her? I don't know that either. Dilemma then. Yes, that's why I came to talk to you. Where is she now? She's at the bar on the other side of the mall. God, this is a diner. Let's go get her. I think I need to talk to her before I can help you. What? Seriously? Are you kidding? I exhaled. No, I am not joking. Don't I have a degree, not only in medicine, but also in psychiatry? Do you have any? I think I'll have to trust your professional opinion. Oh, enough talk, let's move, Peggy said, laughing. Park closer, we'll both get in. Perhaps it would be helpful if we all had a drink together. She doesn't drink anymore. And me too. Well, I'm drinking. I parked as close as possible. We both got out of the car and headed towards the bar. I spotted Judy at the bar. She was talking to the bartender and shooing away guys who tried to approach her. She didn't see me. As Peggy walked past me, I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the booth. Why don't we watch for a while? Spying on your wife is not a good idea, she said quietly, standing up and walking towards Judy. I stood up and hurried after her. The bartender appeared to be preparing another drink for Judy. I watched him closely. He made an extra strong Bloody Mary. I was amazed that Judy would order this. I approached her. Peggy was behind me. Oh, hi, time to go, she asked completely soberly. How many of these did you drink? I asked. Only one Virgin Mary, she said. I just ordered another one. I nodded. I looked at the bartender who brought her a drink. The lady wanted a Virgin Mary, I said. And who are you? He asked. I am her husband. Are you trying to get her drunk? I asked loudly. He poured the drink down the sink before Judy, or I could taste it. 3 bottles of beer, unopened, I told him, and 1 water without gas. I heard Peggy laugh. Judy looked back at me. Thanks for noticing that, honey. Who's your friend? Asked Judy. Judy, this is Dr. Peggy Farr. Peggy, my wife, Judy Carlson. It's nice to finally meet you, Judy, Peggy said, holding out her hand. Judy hesitated a moment, then took Peggy's hand and held it for a moment. Nice to meet you. Who are you? She asked. Why don't we find a cabin? I suggested. Of course we can do that, honey, Judy said sweetly. She didn't say it with irritation, just with curiosity. I grabbed 3 beers and Judy grabbed water and threw a $5 on the bar. The bartender wanted to say something to her, but she just looked at him, so he turned away and walked away. We all went to a booth and sat down. I slid next to Judy, seating Peggy across from us. Judy looked at me. I grabbed her hand, holding her tightly. She smiled and did not withdraw her hand. Judy, I'm Don's therapist. He's been coming to me every now and then for the last 10 years or so. We went to school together, yes, the same one. We graduated in 1 year. We lost touch when I went to medical school. So you are a psychiatrist? Asked Judy. Yes. So you are also an ordinary doctor? I am. Can you help us? Judy asked, almost in tears. I hope I can. Is there something you want to talk about now? Asked Peggy. Eat. I forgot why I left my husband, and I wish he would stop calling me dirty, vile names, Judy sobbed, tears flowing from her eyes. Don, Peggy asked me sternly. I scratched my head with one hand. Judy held the other one. I've been a bastard the last couple of days, but I was very, very angry at her and very hurt. I used some euphemisms that I probably shouldn't have used. I'm not going to apologize because that's what I really thought at the time. I'll probably use them in the future if I think it's appropriate, but I will say I won't use them as often if it doesn't work. Nonsense, Peggy told me. Stop calling your wife dirty names unless she asks you to. Yes, madam, I said. Peggy looked at me. Judy wiped her eyes with a napkin. Judy, I won't call you nasty names unless you ask or do something to provoke me. Fair enough, she said. She squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. She smiled. Dawn, I want to see her on Monday morning. Exactly at 8. I have an appointment at 9, so we can discuss a lot. You will wait for her in the exit room. Understood? Yes, Peggy. Fine. Judy, I hope we can work things out in your favor. I will try to help in any way I can. I live not far from you, but I work on this side of town. I will be available any time after 8 in the evening. Dawn knows my home and mobile numbers. Dawn, give them to her. I will give. I have one more question, Judy said. Which one, dear? Asked Peggy. Have you and he ever been together? Peggy smiled and shook her head. Almost, but my family moved, taking me away before we could do anything right after graduation. I really liked Don at school. If he asked me out on a date, I would happily agree. But now I'm married happily, just like him, I hope. Thank you for your honesty, Judy said, extending her hand to Peggy. Peggy took it and held it, as did Judy. Please, darling. Peggy smiled at her. She's worthy, Dawn. If you don't, I'll hit you between the legs so hard that you won't be able to walk for a week. Judy laughed. I like her. Oh my God, I said. Looks like I'll leave it for now. Okay, I need to go back to the office. See you Monday, Peggy said as she left the booth. Can I get a return trip? She asked, sitting back in the booth. I laughed as she sat down with a sad face. What? Asked Judy. It's parked on the other side of the mall, I said. Oh, then we better go too. Judy started pushing me out of the booth. I shook my head. I just hoped that everything with Peggy would go smoothly, otherwise I might break down. Judy, I met my husband's old friend, and she was stunning, but she was his therapist. They didn't seem to be lovers. Was I grateful? To a certain degree. But on the other hand, I was disappointed that he didn't have someone on his side. I'd rather it was. It would ease some of my anxiety. I really enjoyed the ride to take her to her car. She was funny. She was knowledgeable and could read people better than Dawn. Dawn was quiet on the way back. This upset me. He also looked sad. Do you want to talk? I asked. No, he answered. It seemed like he wanted to say something else, but he held back. I have a question, he said. Okay, ask, I told him. How many men tried to hit on you while you were sitting there alone? He asked. Why do you need to know that? Please just answer the question, he scolded me. Fine. I didn't really count, but I think about 10, including the bartender. He looked at me, nodded, and turned back to the road. How many of them would you choose if you weren't married? He asked. I was shocked by his question, but it got me thinking for a minute. If I were waiting for someone like today, no one. What if you hadn't waited? Probably no one anyway. They were all too old for me. Oh, he said, surprised by what I said. We continued on our way home without saying another word. When we entered the house, he looked at me. I looked at him. Go take off your dress, he told me. I nodded and went upstairs. I noticed that the photographs had disappeared. I came back downstairs naked. He was still wearing trousers and a shirt. It didn't bother me. I liked the way he looked dressed. I also liked the way he looked naked, but he looked just as good dressed. He was sitting in front of the computer again. He just sat there, staring at the blank screen. I sat down next to him. He looked at me and nodded. I like it when you're naked in the house. You are so beautiful, there is no need to hide it while you are at home. He turned his head to the blank screen, so he couldn't see the tears of joy rolling down my cheeks. My heart felt much better after his compliment. My self-esteem has also improved. He thought I was beautiful. Do you want to talk? I asked him again. Yes, but not now. I can't stop thinking about photos of you. They pass through my mind one after another. I feel angry and jealous, and also feel betrayed and lost. But underneath it all, there are my feelings of love for you. And that's the only reason you're not on the street right now. Oh God, I'm sorry I can't remember. I really hope Peggy can help me with this. I really hope so. I believe you, and I want to forgive you, but without knowing the reason, I simply cannot. I understand, I think. There are still things I want to know about what happened to me. what they did to me and made me do, and why. Then I'll know whose ass to kick. No, you won't find out. You will never go near them again. Never. Can you hear me? As long as you live here, never. Understood? I told her. I understand, dear, I answered him. I promise. Also, I called PJ to thank him for bringing you home. I asked him about the lady. She is dead. She was shot by another merchant. Can't be. We sat looking at each other for several minutes. I was a little sad. Not because of her, but because of her children. She had 3. 2 lived with her. I didn't tell Don about it. I had to trust that he would care about the children. I knew he didn't care about Lady. And now, knowing what she did to me, I didn't care either. You are hungry? He asked. Yes. And what do you suggest? Well, later. But now I was thinking about the place where they serve roast beef. Go get dressed. Put that sundress back on. I like that you are without underwear. Okay, I'll be right back. I was happy, but I tried not to show it when I went upstairs to get dressed, if you could call it that. We had a pleasant dinner together. No insults or sarcastic remarks. Don kept his promise, and I was going to keep mine too. The drive to the restaurant was short. We decided to have dinner there. The beef sandwiches were excellent, as were the fries and sodas. Returning home, I went upstairs and undressed. Don came with me and also undressed. We both went back downstairs and sat in the living room. It was starting to get dark, but Don didn't turn on the light. He turned on the TV. This was enough for us to see each other. I looked around. All the curtains were wide open, as were the blinds. I didn't say anything while we were watching some show I knew nothing about. I sat next to him, holding his hand. He allowed me to do this. It didn't take long before he leaned over and kissed me. It was the first time since Friday morning that our lips touched each other. My breath caught when his tongue touched my lips. Then things got out of control, and he started treating me roughly during sex. I hit him hard. He jumped back from me. I jumped to my feet and ran to the bedroom. He was right behind me. I beat him by a split second. I closed the door and locked it. I hoped the door would hold until he calmed down. He didn't even try to enter. I heard him slide down the door and hit the floor, crying. I picked up the phone and called Peggy. She said she would be right over after I explained what happened. I told her the front door was open. I also told her that Dawn was naked so she wouldn't be shocked. I saw the way she looked at him. I knew she was still in love with him. At the bar, he had lipstick on his lips, so they kissed. Either she kissed him or he kissed her. It took her 10 minutes to get there. Dawn was still crying in front of the door. When I heard her voice from the other side, I opened the door. Dawn slowly fell back into the bedroom and lay on the floor at my feet. Peggy sat next to him, speaking to him in a soft, soothing voice. I sat down and held his head. "What happened, Judy?" Peggy asked softly. We had a little fun after dinner on the sofa. Then we started having sex. I told him that he was hurting me. He only had me more. The pain intensified. Then I hit him very hard. He jumped back. I ran here and locked the door. He just collapsed in front of the door. Then I called you. Will he be okay? I don't know, and I won't know until he comes to his senses and starts talking. Let's put him to bed. Peggy and I pulled and pulled until we got him into bed. Why don't you get dressed and come downstairs and we'll talk? I'm fine the way I am, if you don't mind. Why does this suit you? She asked. I promised Don that I would be naked in the house if he didn't tell me to get dressed. I intend to keep my promises to him. It's clear. Okay, let's get a drink or something, Peggy said, heading first. When I went downstairs, I showed Peggy where the alcohol and mixtures were and grabbed a soda from the refrigerator. I sat down at the kitchen table and waited. Peggy mixed herself a bourbon and ice and sat down across from me. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Peggy just looked at me while I drank my soda and cried. Peggy reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I just looked at her with sadness. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Judy, I'm afraid you'll have to choose your words carefully when he makes love or sex with you. Any little thing can throw him off balance. He was traumatized by what you did, what you might have been forced to do, and the fact that he doesn't know why it all happened. So, I sobbed, will he ever get over it and be able to put what I did behind him so we can have a normal sex life, let alone a somewhat normal life? To be honest, I don't know yet. I have an appointment with him on Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Tell him when he wakes up. Until then, I'll be happy to sit with you as long as necessary. If and when we have sex again, should I not ask him for anything? I asked. Yes. I think I can do it. I really love it. I love him so much that my heart is ready to burst with joy. I understand, I really do. I feel the same way about my husband, who is sitting in the car waiting for me. Oh my God, I shouldn't keep you. It's okay, he understands. When we got married, he realized that my patients come first, he comes second. No, no, I can't do this to you. Go. I'll be fine until Dawn wakes up. I woke up, he said from the kitchen doorway. He was still naked. Oh, he squealed, disappearing from view when he saw Peggy. We heard him run upstairs. We sat and waited for his return. Peggy drank the rest of her drink. She smiled. So this is the first time you've seen him naked? I asked. She blushed. Yes. Did he live up to your expectations? She blushed again. Yes. This time her voice is partially choked by passion. Don returned to the kitchen. He looked at us with confusion. He went to the refrigerator, took out a beer, and sat down at the table. He took a long sip before saying anything. First of all, Judy, I'm sorry for hurting you and scaring you. Secondly, Peggy, sorry about the nudity. This will not happen again. It's a shame, Peggy said, pouting her lips. I laughed. Thank you, dear, for your apology. He took my hand and squeezed it gently. Have you calmed down yet? Peggy asked him. Yes. I realized what I had done when she slammed the door in my face. As soon as this happened, I just passed out. I never meant to hurt her, even because she left me. I just wanted to understand what was the motive for her leaving. Everything else was done to her under the influence of substances and the power of suggestion. Short and to the point, you're starting to sound like me, Peggy told him. Now tell the truth. Okay, I wanted to beat her to a pulp. I wanted to hit and kick her until she was on the verge of death. But this opportunity was taken away from me. Would I really do this to her? I doubt it, but these were the thoughts that kept me going, until she came back. Now I just want to love her, but someone is taking that away by showing graphic photos and videos of what was done to her. Peggy clapped her hands. Don looked at her with hatred in his eyes. Yes, it was really good. You know that you would never directly harm this woman. That's why you called her all those dirty names, Peggy said, standing up. Well, I'm going to leave. Dale's waiting in the car, she told Don. Oh my God, you brought Dale with you, he said as if he wanted to hide under a stone. Yes, I had drinks with you and then at dinner, so he drove the car. Does it suit you? She asked Don. Certainly, certainly. He lowered his head. She patted him on the head. Be a good boy, or I'll hurt you and I won't need Dale's help. Understood, she told him. Got it, Peggy, Don replied. Goodbye, Judy, I'll see you tomorrow, she said, turning and leaving the house. I stood up and sat on Son's lap. He hugged me. I hugged him back. I pulled away, looking at him point blank. There was still lipstick on his upper lip. I tried to erase it. He pulled his head away from my hand. Sit still, you have lipstick on your upper lip. Who did you kiss? I asked, wiping off my lipstick. Not with anyone. With you, he said, thinking he had caught me. I didn't wear lipstick today. Remember you told me not to wear makeup. Peggy was wearing lipstick. Exactly the same shade as this one, I said, pointing. Damn, he croaked. Okay, she kissed me. I was as surprised as anyone. She told me something else, but I just ignored it. It's been a long time since I called her. What else did she say? I asked softly. Well, when she kissed me, I answered her. I don't know why, but I wanted. Have you wanted to kiss her since you met again? I asked. Yes, sorry. Not necessary. What else did she say? I asked again. She said she wanted something more from me, but this was not the time or the place. Don lowered his head. And would you like to take advantage of this at some point? I asked. No, 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 not at all, he gasped. I sat there looking at him. I felt how excited he was. I smiled. I loved him so much. But could I let him do what they clearly wanted? Would Dale allow his wife, even if I had not met him, to sleep with another man? Listen to me very carefully, Don, I began, looking into his eyes. When I was sure I had his attention, I continued, Don, if you ever get a chance with her, please do it. I say this from the bottom of my heart. I want you to do this if you think you can without jeopardizing her marriage. I would hate it if you did this to her. Don's eyes opened wide in surprise. If what happened to you hadn't happened, would you have been as loving as you would have allowed me to do what you just said? I knew he was confused. Don, it has nothing to do with what happened to me. It has to do with lost love and finding that lost love. I've never experienced lost love. I hope I don't have to. Time will tell me, but you have. You have a chance to experience the love you have lost, or at least sex with a woman whose love you've lost. I want you two to experience it before it drives you both crazy. He covered his face with his hands. He started crying. I hugged him. I didn't say a word. I just kissed the top of his head. He removed his hands from his face and hugged me, trying to keep his face away from me. I think he didn't want me to see him cry like a baby. Still crying, he raised his face and looked at me with tears in his eyes. Then he kissed me hard. He continued to kiss me until he stopped crying. Then he stopped. He pulled away from me and looked into my eyes. I want to thank you for what you said, but I'm not going to do anything that would make you think that we are equal in our actions. Bitch, he shouted the last word. I slapped him and got up from his lap. You know, you're paranoid, you know it. Do you want to know the real reason I want you to fuck Peggy? Want? I will tell you. When I think about it, it turns me on. But now, I will never let you forget this if you ever do, never, you fucking bastard. I shouted the last word to him. My mother was married when I was born, he answered. But not when you were conceived, bastard. She told me everything. Your mother was a good, approachable woman, and you're just a nasty bastard. I turned and left. She quickly went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. He followed me, not quickly. He knocked on the door. Go away, I shouted. Darling, I'm sorry. Leave. I'm not in the mood to talk right now. Just leave me alone for today. You broke your promise. Think about it, bastard. I heard him leave. A little later, I heard his car pull out of the garage and the garage door closed. I cried again. Half an hour later, I carefully opened the door and went downstairs. He was absent. I looked around. I found his cell phone on his desk in the office. I couldn't even call him. I looked at the last number he dialed on his phone. It was Peggy's number. I called back. Peggy said, I'm already on my way. What's so urgent, Dawn? This is Judy. Don left. Were you planning to meet somewhere? No, I was on my way to talk to you. Why did he leave? She asked. I'll tell you when you arrive. Okay, honey, I'm already pulling into the driveway, she said. I hung up. I heard the car door close, then someone knocked on the front door. When I opened the door, Peggy was standing there. I let her in. I cried. I did something very stupid, I told her. What exactly, dear? She asked, heading towards the sofa. She sat down. I sat down next to her. I saw your lipstick on his upper lip, I began. You didn't accuse him of treason. No, nothing like that. Oh God, how can I say this? He said you hinted that you wanted more than just a kiss. Oh, yes, it's bad, but I always joked with him like that, she said. Is it true? He didn't tell me this. He thought you really meant it. Oh, okay, you caught me in a lie. I'm sorry, but I really want. With him. What exactly do you want to do with him? I asked, wanting her to say it. I want to make love to him. I want him to make love to me. Then I want him to fuck me until I'm exhausted. Is this what you wanted to hear, honey? That's it. What did you tell him? I told him I'd be okay with him ending things with you if he ever got the chance. Oh my God, she whispered. She looked at me for a minute, studying my face. You'd really be okay with that, wouldn't you? Yes. He thought that I only said it so that he would do it, and I would have something to keep him in my hands. He called me a bitch. Tears were flowing down my cheeks again. Okay, she said, looking around. Peggy. Someone I promised to help just caught me in a lie. I never lied to my patients. Judy was my patient. I lied to her. She caught me. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I wanted to hit myself on the head, but I couldn't. I'll do it later when I'm alone. Now I have to help her and her husband, my friend. The man I desperately wanted as my lover, even though I was happily married. Will you ever forgive me? I asked. Of course, but it will take some time. I really like you. You are a person whom my husband loves and has known for a very long time. At some point, you two could be lovers and maybe even get married. That's very generous of you, Judy. I wonder if I could be so generous with someone. Would you cheat on your husband? She asked me. I think it's time to tell the truth, at least to her. Judy, I'll tell you something I've never told anyone, even Dawn. Please, please don't tell him. He thinks Dale is my husband. What? Dale is not my husband. He is my lover, my real husband, and I have an agreement. Oh God, you're a hot wife, Judy whispered. Where are you from? Don read about it on his computer. Oh God, he knows. Yes, I'm a hot wife. I cheat on my husband even though I'm not actually cheating. Is it cheating if he knows about it? Is it cheating if I tell him all the dirty, juicy details? Is it cheating if he watches sometimes? Is it cheating if he participates? I don't know the answers to these questions. Judy looked at me with admiration. Don't look at me like that, I told her. I can't help myself. Not only are you dazzlingly beautiful, but your husband shares you. And not just professionally you, but the real you. He lets other men have you, and he likes it. If Don fucked you, I would have a lot of fun watching it. Wow. Judy was a liberated woman. A woman who shares her husband with others. I suspect that Don was ready to be, well, he already was, a cuckold, just like my dear Sean. What is your husband's name? Judy asked me. Sean, don't tell Don, please. He will ask you. Maybe that's why he left. He really didn't want to know what you were like. It's not so bad, I told her. For some it would be, she answered me. Did he try to hurt you? No. I quickly went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. He knocked quietly on the door, saying that he wanted to apologize. I didn't believe him. Then he left. When I went down to the office, I found his phone number. I called back the last number he called. It was you. It's clear. We both looked at the garage door. The door opened and a car drove in. The sound of the door closing warned us that someone would come through the kitchen door. Dawn walked in and looked at us both shyly. Judy wanted to get up and go to him, but I grabbed her hand and stopped her. She looked at me. Let him come to you, I whisper in her ear. She nodded and sat back down. Dawn looked at me with something I thought I would never see him look at me with. Hatred. I didn't need him to be like me to be his therapist. He just needed to talk to me. The hatred has disappeared. I took a deep breath. He came up to us. Judy, I want to apologize to you for calling you such a terrible name. What kind of name is this? She asked him. Bitch, I'm really sorry. I promise to never call you that again. You already made that promise not more than 2 hours ago, and you broke it an hour after you made it. Why should I trust you now? Oh, she was good. Now I really like her. Don actually dropped to his knees. I pray that you find it in your heart to forgive me for breaking that promise. I really do. Don was good in his own right. It will be fun. I'm a fucking bitch, aren't I? I think it's time for me to go, I said quietly. Oh no, you don't, Judy said, grabbing my arm, holding me there. Dawn? She is here. She agrees. And her husband wants it. Oh God, now he knows. What? Was he stupid? Judy had just explained it to him. She is here. take off her pants and have sex with her. I want to watch you have your high school sweetheart, the one you lost but now found." He shook his head. This was happening. Don was about to have sex with his high school sweetheart, and I was so happy for him that my jealousy and hatred just melted away. The only thing I felt was love and passion. Love for him, and this is strange, passion for Peggy. I wanted to kiss her like Dawn. I wanted to feel her breasts. But I just sat and watched my husband kiss her. It was every man's dream, 2 women at the same time. The 3 of us had sex. "We are fine?" he asked when we finished. "Of course expensive." "Certainly. I really enjoyed watching you." "Maybe you." "No, once is enough. You know I still love her and she still loves me." "I know. She told me this before." "About. The real question is, do you love me?" I asked. I know you love me." "You're right, I love you. More and more every day." I was happy on the inside, but I tried not to show it on the outside just yet. "Thanks for this. I love you more than you can imagine." He looked at me. He wanted to say something, but Peggy came out of the bathroom. "What?" she asked as Dawn and I stood looking at each other. "Nothing," I answered. She nodded, came up to me, and kissed me deeply. "Goodbye, dear Judy. I will see you tomorrow." Then she kissed Dawn just as hard. "I'll see you too, but not as your therapist. I'll call you and set up a meeting with a colleague in the same office." "Fine." I was starting to have doubts, telling you about Judy all the time. "Someone we both don't know will be good. You keep working with Judy, and I'll go to someone else." "Glad you don't mind. You'll still come with Judy, right?" "Yes, of course," Don said. She was out the door before we could say anything. Don pulled up his pants and hurried to make sure she made it to the car. He quickly returned, and I saw Peggy's car leave our yard and speed down the street. Don gently took my hand and led me upstairs. He took off his clothes and pressed me to his naked body. I groaned. He sighed. "I love you," he said. "I love you," I replied. We fell into bed, hugging each other, and fell asleep. Don. I was sitting in the waiting room in Peggy's office. I've been here a few times now, trying to calm down after talking with Peggy. Now I was waiting for Judy to come out of her office. This was their first meeting, so there should have been no time to calm down unless they made a breakthrough in the first session. I was bored. I couldn't wait to see Judy. I couldn't wait to see Peggy. I really needed to know that we were okay. It's the same with Peggy. Yes, I decided that I really loved Judy, even more than I thought I loved Peggy. I thanked Judy for letting me be with Peggy. I was surprised by what she did to Peggy. I wondered if Peggy would like being with Judy. Of course, I would never tell any of them about this. Then Judy and Peggy stood in the doorway. Judy was crying. Peggy too. I stood up, looking at them both. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. "Yes, take her home and love her," Peggy told me, sobbing. I nodded. Judy sobbed and then blew her nose into her handkerchief. She took another tissue from her purse and wiped the tears from her eyes. She turned and kissed Peggy. Peggy kissed her back. It wasn't a loving kiss, just a friendly one. "Take me home, please," Judy asked. "Of course," I replied. I offered her my hand. She took it, holding on to me tightly. We left Peggy's office. This was the first time I didn't kiss Peggy goodbye. Over the next few days I went to work, and when I came home, Judy and I made love. On Wednesday, I saw Peggy's co-worker, Janice. Judy came with me and waited in the waiting room. When my hour was up, Janice walked me to the waiting room. I walked in, and she was standing in the doorway. Judy hugged me as soon as Janice closed the door. I took Judy's hand, and we walked home. The next 2 days flew by. I was back in my office when the secretary brought me another envelope. I started shaking without even opening it. I knew what was there, and I was right. It was another micro SD card. I inserted it into the adapter and connected it to the computer. A new list of files has appeared. There were at least 4 large video files and 100 or so photos. I opened the first photo file. It was Judy, naked, kneeling on the bed. She was smiling again, and her eyes were misty. She was high. I closed all the files and pulled out the card. I put it back in the envelope, folded it, and put it in my shirt pocket. I thought I could take it home and show Judy. Maybe this will jog her memory. At least that's what I hoped. It could also drive her crazy. I sat there wondering what I would like. At the moment, it was the same. Then I mentally kicked myself for having such thoughts. I used to love her. I really loved it. I got up and left. I didn't tell my boss I was leaving, I just left. I knew he wouldn't fire me. He needed me more than I needed him. I was now the only employee who knew the entire system they used for their sales teams. It was a custom system, mostly developed by other programmers who were long gone. Judy. When Don came home earlier, he said he received another SD card with photos and movies on it. He asked if I wanted to watch them. I sat there stunned. I also felt nauseous. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. After I cleaned myself up and brushed my teeth, I came back and told Don I didn't want to see them just yet. He said okay and showed where he had put the envelope with the card in his desk. I nodded. He hugged me. I hugged him back in surprise. I thought getting another card would piss him off again, but he kept his promise. I saw it in his eyes, anger and jealousy, but he hugged me tenderly. I loved him so much. My sessions with Peggy revealed nothing about what had happened to me. Of course, all I did was talk about Don and how much I loved him. I saw Peggy nod and stopped. Sorry, I forgot for a minute that you love him too, I told her. What happened shouldn't have happened at all. I shouldn't have let you push me into this situation. I'm very grateful for that, though. It will never, ever happen again, she told me. I don't remember pushing too hard, I replied, giggling. Let's get back to business. Tell me, what do you remember about your life before you started using drugs? She asked. Those days seemed so far away that it was difficult for me to remember them. Peggy said it was because of the drugs and maybe I should start a little earlier. I nodded. We had a nice house in a nice neighborhood. There was an elementary school right down our street if we decided to start a family. I think it's too late for that now, I said. Do you want kids? Asked Peggy. I wanted to, and so did Dawn. Then our lives went downhill. I was so sad for him when he lost his job. He made such good money. We had a 6-figure savings account. I worked to fund that account. I continued to work to pay the bills. Our savings only lasted for a year. Then I lost my job. That's when we had to sell the house. It was probably my dream house. Cried for 3 days. Then we moved into a motel. I only got enough to pay my weekly rent and buy groceries. Then I met her. Whom? Asked Peggy. A woman, her street name was Lady. Don told me who she was. I didn't believe him. Don't know when or why she gave me the substances. Maybe I asked for them, or told her I was depressed. She started telling me all sorts of things about how Don was treating me wrong, and that I should show him what was what and so on. After that, I don't remember anything until Don found me at his house. What did she say about Don? Asked Peggy. I don't really remember. How I'm supposed to control my money and so on. Was this after she started giving you drugs? I don't know. I don't remember, I answered. There was another session after that. He went about the same way, and this was after Don received the second SD card, which he brought home. He asked if I wanted to watch any of it. I said no and ran to the bathroom and threw up. Since then, he hasn't asked again. I told Peggy. She asked if I could bring her a copy. I shuddered at the thought that she would see what a bitch I had become. She spoke to me softly while I cried. She convinced me that she wouldn't show it to anyone and that it might help her help me. That's why I told Dawn. Instead of me bringing a copy, Dawn brought it to my next session. It was Friday again. I anxiously waited for Dawn to come home, wondering if he would get another SD card. The last 2 Fridays, he came home before 3. It was already well after 3 when he arrived. I looked at him. He cried. He tossed the envelope onto the kitchen table. I picked it up and shook out the contents. There were 5 SD cards. I closed my eyes and began to sob. He was next to me, supporting me. I pushed him away and ran to the bathroom and threw up. 3 times. Dawn. Judy just dumped the envelope I received today on the kitchen table. She started crying, then ran to the bathroom and threw up. I felt terrible. I also threw up at work when I saw what they did to her. She looked terrible, even worse than when I found her. On one of the SD cards, there was a message from the person who sent them. I was waiting for Judy to come back. "Oh my God," she said, plopping down on a chair. "It's worse this time," I told her. "How much worse can it get?" she asked. "You look worse than when I found you. There is also a message from whoever is sending these cards." "What message?" she asked. "Why don't I play it back? I looked at everything. You're not there." "Okay, but if—" "I know. Don't worry. I wouldn't do that after what I heard from that bastard." Oh my God. I pulled out the SD card on which I put a cross. We went to the office. We sat down in front of the computer and I inserted the SD card into the slot in the reader. The video began to play. The screen was dark, with barely enough light to show that someone was sitting there. The voice was distorted when he spoke. "I'm not going to tell you who I am. Like I'd be stupid enough to do that. I heard Judy looks great again. She's a beautiful creature. That's the thing. She owes us a lot of money for all the drugs that she ate. I believe that if she comes back and makes another adult video with us, she will be free. If not, we will release what we have into the public domain and let her explain to your boss what a bitch she is for. Black man, let me know by next Friday, or else you can text to 2868. That means bitch, by the way." "Which video?" asked Judy. "Apparently, before you started looking this bad, they made videos of you, and I don't know how many black guys and other white women. I saw you with I don't know how many women too. Black, white, you seem to have it all equals." "Oh God," she cried and ran to the bathroom. I just sat there, feeling like I was ready to throw up too. Obviously, she had no intention of returning to him, and if I ever found out who he was, he would be a dead man. Judy. I just listened to a man who was trying to blackmail me into making another video for him. Damn, if that happens. I don't care about my reputation. Don's reputation is important to me. He needs her for work. But I sincerely hoped that Don felt the same way as I did. If I ever found out who he was, he would be dead and could join the lady in hell. I threw up again. I heard Don talking to Peggy on my way downstairs. He told her about the latest SD card and the blackmail video. He quickly ended the conversation with her when I returned. "She'll be here now," Don told me. "She asked me to warn you, no tricks." He smiled as he said this. I smiled back at him. "She's a funny girl, she is," I joked. Don chuckled. I laughed too. I felt completely empty. Don looked the same. I don't know how long we sat there without saying a word, but a knock on the door brought us out of this state. Still naked, I went and looked through the peephole. It was Peggy. I opened the door. She came in, closed the door, and hugged me tenderly. I sighed when she did. I took her to the office. Don didn't even turn around until she addressed him. "Don," she shouted. He turned in his chair, looked at her, and began to cry. Peggy pushed me towards him. I went and hugged him. He hugged me tightly. He whispered. I couldn't make out what he was saying. "Speak up, dear," I asked him. "I love you, I love you, I love you," he repeated. Peggy pushed me away from him and hit him in the face. He kept repeating, "I love you." She hit him a second time harder, then a third time. He turned in his chair. He stopped talking and looked at us. "No more, please?" he asked. Peggy nodded, lowering her hand. "Make me copies of what you have, especially this blackmail video. My husband has software that can get an image of his face and his real voice. And don't worry, he won't show it to anyone but me. As for the others, only I will watch them, I promise." I made copies of all the files for her. Judy came into the living room while I was working. Peggy stood behind me, talking to me the entire time. "I want to say that I enjoyed it with you and Judy, but it will never happen again. Even if my husband wants me to, I won't ever." "I know it won't happen," I told her. "Oh," I thought. "No, just no." "Okay, I'm glad that's cleared up. she said with a hint of hysterical laughter in her voice. I finished copying, marked the blackmail videos with an X, and put them in an envelope. I handed her the envelope. She nodded and walked out into the living room. I went out there and found her sitting next to Judy, who was talking to her very quietly. Judy nodded and cried as Peggy spoke to her. I waited on the other side of the room until they finished. When Peggy got up to leave, I went to her and hugged her. I hugged her tightly. She gasped but hugged me back. I let her go and took a step back. She smiled at me. I nodded to her. We looked at each other for a few more seconds, then she walked out the door. I stood there looking at Judy. Judy looked at me. I smiled, feeling my heart beating in my chest. Judy just sat there quietly. I extended my hand to her. She took it in hers. I gently lifted her to her feet. She smoothly flowed into my arms. I sighed, placing my hands on her bare back. She was so soft. "I love you," I told her. "I love you," she replied. We stood there for so long. Then I took her upstairs and made love to her. Peggy. I gave my husband the SD card with the video, with strict instructions not to show it to anyone. He nodded and went to his office. I took my laptop and sat on the sofa. I inserted one of the SD cards. A file manager has appeared. I looked at all the files. Some were just images, others were videos. I started one of the videos. I paused the video and opened the picture manager to see all the photos. Judy looked terrible in all of them. I started to feel nauseous when another video started when I clicked on it. It had music and credits, just like in a Hollywood film. I let him play. Judy appeared. She was beautiful. She looked healthy and fit, not high. But in the close-up of her face, I could see that her pupils were fully dilated in the bright sunlight, which meant she was on substances. I let the movie continue. Don told me that on the first SD card he got, she seemed to know what she was doing, but it was clear she was all high on it so they could make her do what they wanted. This is what happened here too. She was beautiful in this video. I heard Sean come in. I closed my laptop. "Who was that?" he asked. "I can't tell you, and if I ever find out that you saw this, I will divorce you instantly. Do you understand, mister?" I scolded him. "I understand client confidentiality. I'm done with this card. Here is a picture of the guy and an audio file on this card with the letter with his real voice. I also have other information that was not removed from this card." "Which?" I asked. "His name. It's just a name, but maybe your patient knows who it is. Jimmy," he told me. "Thank you, dear," I said, taking the cards from him. "I'll be up in bed in a minute." "I'll be waiting, sexy," he told me. I giggled as he left. Jimmy. I remember Judy telling me about a guy named Jimmy. I wonder if he looked the same as the photo I looked at. Well, tomorrow is going to be an interesting day for Jimmy. I know Don wanted to talk to him. I was also sure that Judy wanted to talk to him. I even started wanting to talk to him. I hid the SD cards even though I knew Sean wouldn't look for them. He was honest with me. I headed to bed with my husband. I loved him so much. Yes, more than I still loved Don. God, I couldn't get him out of my head. Don. We were sitting in a rented car. Judy was next to me. Peggy was with us. Why, I don't know. She said that Judy or I might need a witness. I told her that if something bad happens, I don't want witnesses. She just snorted at me. As soon as Judy and I saw the photo, we knew who it was. "Jimmy!" Judy screamed. I thought that bastard was my friend. I said nothing. I didn't think it was time for, "I told you so." Peggy patted me on the shoulder for not saying it. She saw that I wanted to say this. I stopped the car. "Peggy, when I get out, you take the wheel. Don't run over him, just try to intercept him while I catch up with him," I said, opening the door and running. I looked back and saw that Peggy was in full swing. She rushed past me at about 60. That's when I noticed Judy wasn't in the car, and she ran up to me with a baseball bat in her hand. Jimmy didn't hear us until Peggy drove past him and turned the wheel. He just stared at Peggy. At that moment, Judy hit him on the head with a bat. He fell like a rag doll. I stopped, sliding past him. I was next to him when Judy returned with her bat raised, ready to hit him again. "He won't feel it," I said, raising my hand to block her blow. "What, did I kill the bastard?" she asked, breathing heavily. "No, he's passed out." I waved for Peggy to come over to us. I opened the back door and threw the little bastard in the back seat. I sat down after him. "Peggy, you're driving to our house," I said as Judy got into the car. "Judy, we had this damn bastard. I had the pleasure of hitting him on the head." Peggy drove the car. Don was in the back seat with him in case he woke up. Don said he was alive, but had a pretty big bump on his head. It didn't bleed, so I didn't hit him too hard. Peggy kept wanting to stop to check on him. After all, she was a doctor, not Don. Don told her to go. We got home in 20 minutes. Jimmy was still unconscious or pretending to be. As we pulled into the driveway, Don poked his thumb into the soft spot under his ear. He didn't even groan. Don came out and pulled Jimmy out of the car by his feet. Just before he hit his head on the threshold, Don stopped and put his feet on the ground. He grabbed him by the hand and lifted him onto his shoulder. Don was strong, much stronger than Jimmy, much stronger than most men I've known. Funny how he didn't look that strong. He carried Jimmy home and threw him on the sofa. Peggy walked up to him and examined him. "He probably has a concussion. Did you have to hit him that hard, Judy?" "I tried to kill the little bastard," I cried. "I understand, honey," Peggy said. I fell to my knees and started crying again. Peggy came up to me and hugged me. Don was in the office. He came out with a pistol in his hand. Peggy looked at him. "Don?" she asked. "What?" "It's to scare him," he said. Jimmy started moaning. I got up. I still had the bat in my hand. Peggy stood next to me. Don walked over and pointed the gun at his right eye. Jimmy opened his eyes. He jerked back when he saw the gun. "What the hell?" he shouted. Then he saw me with a bat. "You hit me. Why?" "Why?" I screamed. "Why? You damn bastard." The gun fired. Peggy fell to the ground. I just laughed when I saw the look on Jimmy's face. "You little piece of shit," Don shouted. "I should have shot you for what you did to my wife, you little bastard." The gun fired again. Jimmy screamed and put his hands to his right ear. "You shot me," he shouted. "You're lucky I didn't cut off what's between your legs," Don hissed at him. "What the hell are you talking about?" Jimmy asked. "Jimmy, we know it was you. We have your voice and a copy of the video of you trying to blackmail my wife into doing another movie for you. Now, if you don't tell us who else was involved, I'll shoot off your equipment, throw you out into the street like you threw Judy. Got it?" The gun went off again, and Jimmy suffered another cut on his right ear. He screamed in pain. Okay, I'll tell you everything," he shouted. Don took a step back. Jimmy jumped up from the couch and ran to the front door. I hit him right on the back, and Peggy tripped him and tripped him. He fell face down. Don was there, grabbing him by the neck. He picked it up and threw it back on the couch. "Well?" Don shouted. Peggy went to Jimmy again. I went to the bathroom and took the first aid kit. I hurried over to Peggy and placed the first aid kit next to her. I stood back while Don watched Jimmy closely. "Have you found those who did this to me?" I asked. "Yes. We'll see him tomorrow." "Do we know where he is?" "Yes." "Are you going to kill him?" "He's not worth going to jail for." "About? You want him dead, don't you?" Don asked. "Yes." "Are you ready to lose me by spending the rest of your life in prison?" "No, of course not," I replied. "Okay, so we won't kill him, but we will torture him a lot." "Yes." "What are we going to do with him?" asked Peggy. "We'll dump it somewhere," Don said. "Only if it's at the entrance to the emergency room," Peggy told Don. "Too many cameras." "Then where are you going to dump it?" "Right where we picked him up," Don told Peggy. And that's what we did. Peggy gave Jimmy and Don a ride in the back seat. Peggy stopped and Don kicked him out of the car. Peggy left. They left me at home. When they returned, it was already very late. Peggy called her husband and said she would stay the night. I went upstairs to make sure the guest room was ready. Dawn poured her a drink. We then all sat around the kitchen table talking when I suddenly felt exhausted. I'm going to bed. Good night, honey. I love you, I said, kissing Dawn. Good night, Peggy. I hugged her and went to bed. Peggy. I sat with Dawn, talking about everything and nothing. When I started yawning, he told me to go to bed. Okay, show me where I'll sleep, I said. Just get into bed with Judy. I'll stay awake just in case, he told me. Okay, good night. I hugged him and kissed him. I went upstairs and found the master bedroom at the top of the stairs. Judy lay naked, not quite under the covers. I walked to the edge of the bed, looking at her as I undressed. She was a beautiful woman. When I climbed into bed, she stirred a little and mumbled, I love you. I smiled. I knew she meant Dawn. Then she turned to me and pressed herself. I smiled, letting her do it, then kissed her cheek and laid my head on the pillow next to hers. I love you too, Peggy, she whispered, kissing my cheek. I was surprised. Good night, darling, I told her and kissed her on the lips. She kissed back. We lay there for a long time, kissing. Judy then turned over to her side of the bed and fell asleep. I was a little excited by her lips, so it took me a while to calm down before I drifted off to sleep. I woke up in the early morning hours to the feeling of a man behind me. I looked and saw that it was Dawn. He was fast asleep, clinging to me in his sleep. I smiled and closed my eyes, falling asleep again. Dawn. We knew where the bastard was. We sat in bright sunlight. He came out of his room and walked straight towards us. Peggy was sitting on the hood of the car. I was driving with the door open. Judy was 3 places away from us in a rental car. I was in his car. Did you call the police, Darnell? Peggy screamed. How do you know my name, bitch? Ha ha, are you kissing your mother with that mouth? Don't you dare talk about my mother, bitch, Darnell shouted, and get your ass off my car. Yeah, I know, bitch. You're so predictable, Darnell. Peggy jumped down from the opposite side of the car from Darnell and stood smiling at him. As Darnell approached the driver's door, I stepped out and pointed the gun at his groin. He froze in place, looked at me, and started laughing. You won't shoot me, cuckold. I pulled the gun away and hit him hard before he could finish speaking. He fell to the ground. I looked at him, smiling. It hurts, right? I laughed. You hurt my wife even more, and you should be glad she's not here with that gun, because you would be dead. Do you want to be dead? He groaned, shaking his head. Where are the flash drives? I asked. In my room, Darnell moaned, still holding his groin. Are they all there? Any duplicates? Only the ones I gave to someone to give to you, he growled. I looked at Peggy while hitting him again. His eyes widened, and he groaned loudly. I searched for him. No key. How do I get into the room? I asked, sitting down next to him. He shook his head, still holding his groin. Knock on the door. My wife is there, he whispered. Wife? Seriously? Can I meet your wife? Does she know where the flash drives are? He nodded, groaning. Wife. Maybe I should take her with me and treat her the same way you treated mine. No, dude, you're not. What? You'll kill me? Kidnap my wife and screw her so hard she'll have to stay in the hospital for weeks. Oh wait, you already did that to my wife. You fucking. I stood up and punched again. This time he lost consciousness. I'll go to the hotel. You get in the car with Judy. I might have another passenger, so get in the front, I told Peggy. She nodded and went to get into the car. I crossed the road to the motel. I knocked on Darnell's door. It opened slowly. What do you want? I hit the door with my shoulder, pushing it inside the room. I walked in and looked around. She was alone. She was lying on the bed. Where are Darnell's SD cards with my wife? I shouted. In the top drawer, in a small white box, she said. I told that animal that he would pay for what he did. Do you want to come with us? Get away from him. Hell yes, but I have a son with him. He's at school now. I can't leave forever, but for a few hours, of course I can. He won't hurt you if you come back. You better not dare. The number is in my name. I'll kick his ass out of here. Okay, let's go, I told her. On the way to the car, she said her name was Helen. I looked at her and shook my head. She laughed. When she saw Darnell lying on the ground. He's not dead, is he? She asked. No, but he won't be able to have any more children. Fine. She followed me to the car. When she saw the other two women, she stopped. What's happening? She asked. Nothing. They helped me with Jimmy and then with Darnell. What did you do to Jimmy? He will never be able to walk without a limp for the rest of his life, I told her. Good. Sit down, I told her. She climbed into the back seat, and I followed her. Let's go. Judy, this is Helen. Helen, my wife Judy. Peggy, this is Helen. Peggy, our friend. Nice to meet you, Helen said, sounding like a question. Peggy, why are you driving? I asked when she was backing up. So Judy doesn't run over that idiot when she drives out, Peggy said, steering the car straight at Darnell. At the last moment, she swerved, and he rolled. We returned home an hour later. Judy, why Don brought Helen along, I will never know, but she was funny and quite smart. She even told us more about Darnell and his boys, who were looking for beautiful white girls, getting them drunk and making movies with them. She hated what he did and wouldn't let him use her place for it. Dawn asked if she knew where he was doing it. Of course, there's an abandoned warehouse near the motel. They set it up like a movie studio. I was there one day when they were filming this cute little brunette. They did things to her that no woman should have to endure. I went outside and threw up. Then I went home. Why didn't you do something to stop what they were doing? I asked angrily. It didn't concern me, Helen replied. It was about me, I growled at her. Helen simply shrugged. What are you going to do to me? She asked. How about we do to you what they did to me? I said with an angry grin on my face. Do you think Darnell will leave you after we do this? Leave me? No, but the number is in my name, she replied. Judy, Don, and Peggy exclaimed at the same time. I lowered my shoulders and bowed my head. Well, at least we have all the SD cards, I said. Dawn and Peggy spent the next few hours talking to Helen, actually interrogating her. I went upstairs to lie down for a while. I still had trouble sleeping at night. I must have slept for a long time when I woke up to someone crawling into bed with me. It was dark. It's me, honey, Don said, moving closer to me. He was naked. And me too. Hello? What time is it? I asked. After midnight. Oh God, I'll be awake all night. Why did you let me sleep so long? Peggy told me that you don't get enough sleep and that you can't sleep at night. I thought it best to let you sleep while you can. Of course. Thank you, honey. I love you. I know. I love you too. It's been a long time since I first told him I loved him without him telling me. I smiled as he pressed himself against my back, placing his hand on my side and gently cupping my breast. I sighed at his touch. Did you get Helen home in time for her to meet her baby? I asked. Of course. He's a sweet little boy. Darnell sat outside on the ground, waiting for her to return. He didn't even threaten, he just sat there. She laughed at him and went inside, closing the door before he could get up. I laughed at him when I left. Peggy laughed too. Did you make love to her? Who? Helen? God, no. No, with Peggy, I told him. No, when we got back from taking Helen home, she went home. I looked at all the SD cards I had. Not all of them are yours. They're probably all the girls they conned in their scheme. Oh my! Is there a way to track them and give them proof? I don't know. Peggy said maybe her husband could do it, but she doesn't want those flash drives in their house. She's going to bring him over next week. Have you ever met him? I asked. No, I don't even know his name. I always thought Dale was her husband. Oh, okay. They're coming for dinner, lunch, when? For dinner on Saturday night, if that's okay with you. Of course. It will be nice to see Peggy and her husband in an informal setting. It will. Do you want to make love? Dawn asked. Yes, Dawn. I enjoyed giving her pleasure. Then she screamed at me. She tried to push me away, tried to run away from me, screamed at the top of her lungs. I moved away from her and knelt down, trying to calm her down. Then she lost consciousness. She breathed, quietly and slowly. There was a mask of fear on her face. I called Peggy. Peggy, I'm sorry to bother you, but Judy had a seizure and is now unconscious, okay? See you soon. Peggy's going to be here soon, dear, I said, hoping she would hear me. I tucked Judy in and went downstairs to await Peggy's arrival. 15 minutes later, she knocked on the door. I hope I didn't interrupt you and your husband, I apologized. No, I was reading the files, and he was sleeping. Where is she? She's upstairs in bed. That's where it happened. I can guess. You were pleasuring her. She looked at you and started screaming, then fainted. Yes, how did you know? I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner. We were already in the bedroom. Peggy sat down next to Judy. She shook it gently. Judy took a deep breath before opening her eyes. She looked at Peggy, then at me. She smiled at me. Then Peggy. Why are you here, Peggy? Asked Judy. You don't remember what happened tonight? Asked Peggy. I came to bed while you and Dawn were talking. I fell asleep. You just woke me up, Judy said. Dawn, can you leave us for a while? Asked Peggy. Sure, take all the time you need. See you later, honey. I love you. I turned and left. I love you, Judy replied when I went out. Peggy. Sit down, dear, I said to Judy. She looked at me as she sat down. She looked confused. You look a little confused? I asked. Yes. Peggy, what's going on? Asked Judy, almost crying. Well, honey, you had a psychotic episode. You and Dawn were having sex, and when you looked at him, you didn't see Dawn, but one of your abusers. Oh God, no, she gasped. Now she was crying. I hugged her. She hugged me back. Don't worry, they will go away. I'll give you a prescription that will help you deal with it, and we'll work on it in sessions. I must have scared the crap out of Dawn. Oh my God, I owe him an apology, Judy said, moving to stand. Don't, honey, he knows it wasn't him you saw. I explained to him what happened and that I expected this much earlier, but you, dear Judy, are a strong woman with a very stable husband to lean on. He can't be too stable if he sees you, she said, giggling. I smiled and hugged her tightly. The crying started again. She let me go. I laid her back on the bed. She fell asleep. I got up and went downstairs. Dawn was standing in the kitchen, looking at the doorway when I entered. How is she? He asked, worried to death. I saw love for her in his eyes. She's fine. I told her what happened. She's sorry for making you worry. She's sleeping now. She should sleep through the night. The episode has exhausted her. Will she be okay? He asked. I took the prescription pad out of my jacket pocket. I sat down and took a pen and wrote her a prescription for a mild antipsychotic. Get this from the pharmacy and have her take 1 tablet with breakfast every morning. This should stop the hallucinations and therefore psychotic episodes. Do I need to pick this up now? Dawn asked. No, tomorrow will be enough. I still want to see her every Monday, okay? I see. Thank you very much, Peggy. I owe you one. You owe a debt. I may soon collect the debt. Now kiss me so I can go home, I told him. He leaned over and kissed me deeply. I felt his passion and gratitude. I was so happy for him and Judy. I love them both. I pulled away before I forgot what I was doing. See you on Monday, I told him. He nodded as I headed towards the door. I stopped in front of the door, turned and looked at him. God, how I loved him. I smiled, opened the door and walked out, closing it behind me. Done. Peggy left. If she had stayed just a minute longer, I would have given her what she wanted me. But I had a sick wife upstairs. She was raving about what happened to her. I was really worried about her. What other effects could those bastards have on her? What other hallucinations will she experience? I should have shot those bastards. I locked the house, turned off all the lights and went upstairs. I undressed and climbed into bed. Judy was sleeping on my side of the bed. I climbed onto her side. I moved until I found myself hugging her. I kissed her on the cheek. "Peggy went home?" she asked. "Yes. How do you feel?" "Fine. A bit tired. You should have made love to her." "What?" I said hoarsely. "You should have slept with her. I know she wants you again. I know she said she shouldn't, but she will. You have my permission to sleep with her whenever you want. I love you so much, and I want you to be happy." "Oh my God. I love you. I really, really love you." "Yes? How strong?" "I would die for you," I told her. "No, never die for me, never. Live for me. Live for yourself. If I die, I want you to live." "I'm so sad right now," Judy said, sobbing. "Sorry. I won't die for you. I will kill for you." "Would you do this for me?" "Yes. I have several names," she said, giggling. "Let's sleep. And thanks to Peggy." "Please. Now, if you give me permission to have sex with her husband, maybe we can have some fun this weekend," she said with complete seriousness. I thought about what she had just asked. I lay there hugging her, and what she asked didn't bother me. Not in the slightest. The thought of her doing this in secret bothered me. "Okay," I said. "Okay, what?" she asked, confused. "Okay, you can fuck Peggy's husband if you want." "Won't it bother you?" "No, I'm even more surprised than I think that it won't bother me." "Seriously?" "Seriously. I think about you with someone else we talked about, and it doesn't bother me. I think about you with someone else without telling me, and my blood starts to boil." "Yes, it's the same for me." I looked at her. I could only see the sparkle in her eyes. They were wide open in surprise. Mine probably do too. I moved closer to her. My lips pressed against hers. She answered me with a tender kiss. I felt my heart fill with love and passion. "God, I love you so much," I told her. "I love you too. My heart would be empty without you. Please stay with me, hold me tight as we fall asleep." "I'll stay," I said, hugging her tighter. We both sighed. I closed my eyes, and before I knew it, I began to fall asleep. Judy. It was Saturday afternoon. Peggy and her husband could come at any moment. Dawn was in the backyard grilling our steaks, corn and potatoes. I was preparing a salad. The table was set, the wine was steaming, the beer was cold, and I didn't have a seizure all week, no matter what Dawn did. It's been a wonderful week. Lots of sex, lots of tender love, and most importantly, no insults. In fact, no quarrels. I was very happy. Of course, I still didn't remember why I left in the first place, but Peggy and I are working on getting those memories back. But she said they might never come back, no matter how much I want to remember them. She says the brain is an amazingly complex thing that can remember something forever and forget something forever. You never know what he will remember or forget, but we're working to dig up those memories. "They're here," Dawn shouted from the backyard. He must have seen them pull into the driveway. I went to the front door and opened it before they could ring the bell. Peggy was carrying a bowl of some kind of salad. "Hi," she said as she entered the house. "This is Sean." My eyes bulged out of their sockets. Dawn's boss was standing on the threshold of my house. I felt dizzy and my breathing became rapid. Peggy snapped her fingers in front of my face. "Hey, Sean, nice to see you again," I said, hugging him. "Dawn knows?" I asked Peggy. "No, I can't wait to see his face." "Do you really want to shock him like that?" "He'll be fine. Now call him." "I'm not sure about this, Peggy. I really am," I said, walking toward the back door. I went outside to see how things were going. "Hey, baby, where are Peggy and her husband?" he asked me. "They're inside getting the drinks ready. Why don't you go and let Peggy introduce you to her husband?" "Certainly. Will you look after the steaks?" "Certainly." I was glad I wasn't going into the house. "Peggy, it's time. It's been 8 years since Dawn and I found each other. It's been 6 years since my husband hired him, and he was very glad he did. Yes, Judy knew Sean from office Christmas parties and other corporate events. Sean, turn your back to the back door. Don't turn around until I introduce you. Okay, I kind of agree with Judy on this. Don't worry, SHH. Don is here. Hi, how are you, Peg? Don asked. Fine. I want to introduce you to my husband. Don, this is Sean. Don's jaw dropped when Sean turned around. He just looked at me, not at Sean. How? Don, I asked. How? How? How could you do something like that? Why did you keep it a secret? What the hell, Peggy? He turned and headed back into the yard. Sean simply shook his head. I ran after him. Wait here, I told Sean. He went to the kitchen. I was out the door and in front of Son before he got to the grill. Come on, listen to me, Mr. DeCindis Carlson, I said in my most authoritative voice. Nonsense, Peggy, this is nonsense, Don shouted. Then Judy was next to him. She stood next to her man. Peggy, it was a mistake, Judy told me. What? Don said sharply. I gave Sean your resume and he wanted to hire you. I didn't want him to interfere with your therapy. I should have done it later, but it was just easier this way. I'm very, very sorry. Judy, why don't you go inside? Don said. She wanted to stay by his side while he fought with me. She hasn't done this for a long time. I want to stay close to you, Judy said. I know, honey, but Peggy and I need to work this out between ourselves. Go inside, keep Sean company, and tell him it's not his fault. I know it's her fault. I'll go inside under protest, Judy said. I love you, Don told his wife. I love you, Judy told him. Judy. I stood at the back door for a while, not looking inside or turning around to see what was happening behind me. I also didn't want to be alone with Sean. He was a handsome man, not much younger than Don and me. He was in good shape, slim, and had a nice, sexy smile. His eyes were the first to attract me. Crystal blue. I couldn't take my eyes off them when we met for the first time. From then on, I fantasized about us having sex. And unless Don changes his mind, it could happen tonight. I heard Don and Peggy arguing loudly. They were fighting about Sean and Don's job. It's time to at least keep our guest company. Sean stood in the kitchen, looking out the window at Don and Peggy at the grill. I walked over and stood next to him. How is Don doing at work? I asked him. I really wanted to know. He didn't take too many days off, I hope. He is okay. I know you have a little problem, and as far as I understand, family comes first. So Peggy told you. No, not at all. I could tell by his appearance when he came to work. But don't worry, I'm not going to fire him even if Peggy asks. That's good to hear. I'm sure he'll be at work more often after this weekend. I'll keep an eye on this. What did Peggy tell you about us? I know that she has been in love with Don for a long time. I know he's in love with you by the way he talks about you. I know you both slept with her a couple of weeks ago. Yes, don't worry, I'm sure she told you that I let her do whatever she likes, sex-wise. She said, I answered him, I gave Dawn permission. Is it true? That's good to hear. And you? He asked. I have permission too, with you if you want, but I think Dawn wants us all in the same room. I wouldn't have it any other way, Sean said, smiling at me and sipping his beer. You do not drink? No, I cannot. Peggy gave me some medicine that I can't drink with or else, well, let's just say I'll get sick, I told him, drunk to put me to bed. It's good because if I had to, it wouldn't be fun and it wouldn't be good. You can hug me if you want, I told him, looking back at Dawn and Peggy. They were still talking. It looked a little tense. Sean put his arm around me and pulled me towards him. I smiled. It felt good to be hugged, even if it was from almost strangers. We only met a few times and never really talked. He was an attractive man and treated Dawn well. He never tried to hit on me, but I was hoping that would change tonight. Do you think we should go out and stop them before things come to blows? He asked. Dawn would never have hit her unless she asked, but I think we should remind them that we are here, I told him. Peggy. Don practically screamed at me for about 20 minutes. For the first couple of minutes, Judy stood to go inside, but that didn't stop him from reproaching me. I didn't smile. What he said was true, and I shouldn't have kept the information about who Sean was from him. He worked for him. I asked Sean not to tell Don who he was. Sean told me it was a mistake, and it would come back to bite me in the ass. He was right. And one more thing, miss. I know people. Don, I said. Yes. Steaks. They're fine. I brought them out of the heat. They are as ready as corn and potatoes. Then let's get them inside before. Well, never mind. They're coming this way. Apparently, they were tired of waiting for food, I said as Judy and Sean left the house. I crossed my arms and lowered my head for a second, then looked Don in the eyes. Sorry. I'm really sorry. There was no ulterior motive in not telling you who my husband is. I just thought that if you found out about this earlier, you would think that he was reporting to me, which I would never allow him to do, or someone else would do that, I swear to God. He smiled at me when I finished. Then he laughed. Then I heard Judy giggling and Sean grinning. They all heard my confession. I nodded, not the least bit embarrassed. Time to eat, Don said, taking the steaks, potatoes, and corn from the grill and placing them on a huge tray. Sean came up to me and hugged me, holding me close to him. Judy and Don carried the food inside while my husband kissed my neck. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, I replied, sighing as his lips touched the skin of my neck again. Let's go eat. Come on, I said, taking his arm as we headed for the back door. Don, dinner was amazing. While we ate, the conversation was light and interesting, with no mention of sex or why I was mad at Peggy. I was very angry with her. For Sean, no. He was my boss and friend at work. Now, I didn't know who he was here. Perhaps he will soon become my wife's lover, and I will become his wife's lover. I know Judy wanted us all to be in the same room, if not the same bed, during sex. I could close my eyes and see her next to me having the sex of her life, while I was having sex with Peggy. But not now. Judy went to the refrigerator. Dessert, anyone? She asked. No, not for me, honey, said Peggy. Me too, Judy, Sean said. Dawn, she asked me. Maybe later, honey, I said. Yes, maybe later, she said, closing the refrigerator door. Well, what should we do now? Asked Peggy. I laughed. Everyone was looking at me. I shook my head. I just thought about it. The game, Truth or Dare, came to mind, I said. Hey, I remember playing this in college. It looks like a good game. What do we need to do? Asked Judy. Someone starts and asks the truth or dare, you choose one. If it's true, you're being asked a question that you must answer truthfully, no matter what it is. If you choose an action, they give you a task that you must complete, no matter what it is, I explained. She was thoughtful, and it was clear that she was thinking about it. Okay, I'm in, Judy said. Me too, Peggy screamed. Okay, me too, Sean said, although he didn't look like he wanted to play. Okay, I'm in, I said. Who will start? Judy, Peggy said. Fine. Truth or dare? She asked him. Oh, really? Crap. Okay. Do you like sex? Wow, that's really pathetic, Peggy said. But I don't know her, Sean defended himself. Yes, of course I like sex, Judy replied. Now, Dawn, truth or dare? Is it true? I wondered what question she would ask me. Are you still in love with Peggy? I almost choked on my beer. What? You heard me, she said. I can't answer that. Of course you can. What happens if he doesn't answer? She asked. He has to take off an article of clothing, Sean said. I'd really like to hear your answer. Okay, this is how it will be. I hope you both will be happy with my answer. Yes, I love. What do you like? Asked Judy. I still love Peggy. How I still love Donna and Katie and Joan and Joyce and Jane and all the other girls I fell in love with before I met you. Are you satisfied? Yes, very. She smiled when I listed all the girls I had dated before her. Fine. Sean, truth or dare? I asked my boss. True, he said. Do you like watching Peggy have sex with other men? No outrage from anyone. Yes, I think it's the most erotic thing I've ever experienced. Sean, Judy said. Dawn, truth or dare? Oh my God, really, I said. I wasn't ready for action yet. Do you like watching Judy have sex with other men? Peggy sucked in a breath. Judy winced. I just looked at Sean with a neutral gaze because he didn't know much about what happened with Judy, except he got us a video of Jimmy. I've been thinking about this question a lot lately. I also came to the conclusion that I would enjoy seeing her with another man or men, as long as she discussed with me what she would do in advance and I could watch. No sneaking behind my back, no leaving a girl's night out to go home with someone she met. If she finds a guy there that she wants to sleep with, she should call me, tell me about him, and then bring him to our house, or meet me at the hotel. Wow, Peggy said. Judy sighed. I love you, she told me. I smiled at her. Damn, Sean said. Peggy, do you make them use a condom? It's not your turn to ask questions, dear. That's out of the game, honey. This concerns our health. Of course I force them to use a condom if I don't know they're healthy, she told him. Fine. I love you, Sean told her. I love you too, honey, Peggy replied. Dawn? Oh, yes. Who to choose? Okay, Judy, truth or dare? Action, she said, surprising me, but maybe it's time. Fine. Kiss the man in the room who is not your husband. We all laughed at this. Judy stood up and walked over to Sean, sat on his lap, and kissed him on the lips. Peggy watched carefully. Stop, I shouted after 2 minutes. They separated and Judy returned to her seat. She fanned herself as she walked. Peggy started laughing and Judy started giggling. Now it's my turn, Judy said. Peggy, truth or dare? Action. Kiss the man in the room who is not your husband. We laughed again. Peggy looked at me, smiled, and walked over to me. She sat on my lap and pressed her lips to mine. I answered her with the same passionate kiss as she gave me. Stop, Sean shouted. Peggy slowly pulled away from my lips. Wow, she said, still sitting on my lap. I patted her on the buttocks, and she jumped up. No touching yet, she chided. Peggy sat up and looked at the three of us. Sean, truth or dare? She asked her husband. Action, he said, smiling. Kiss your wife passionately, Peggy said, giggling. Sean laughed. He stood up and hugged Peggy, kissing her passionately. Peggy responded with an equally passionate kiss. 2 minutes later, I said stop. They separated and returned to their places. Okay, now it's my turn, Sean said. Judy, truth or dare? Action. Kiss your husband passionately, Sean told her. Judy smiled and stood up and walked over to me and sat on my lap. She smiled at me and pressed her lips to mine. I felt the warmth of her body when she kissed me. Stop, Peggy said. Judy sighed, leaving my lips, stood up and returned to her seat. Now it's my turn, she said. Peggy, truth or dare? Action. Peggy, satisfied Dawn. I got him really horny for you, Judy said, giggling. Sean's eyes widened slightly. Peggy did too, but she stood up and came over to me. RNA did it. Stop, Sean shouted. My turn, Judy, truth or dare? It's like I don't know what you're going to make me do. Okay, action, Judy said. Judy, do the same for Sean, Peggy said. I nodded to her. She smiled and stood up and walked over to Sean and did it. We continued to play like this until we were ready for sex. Let's go upstairs where it will be more comfortable, I said quietly to Peggy. She nodded. I walked up to Sean and Judy. We're going upstairs. Would you like to join? I asked. Judy smiled, nodding. We all started moaning and groaning, filling the room with the sounds of sex. The rest of the night was so sexy. Sean and I took turns having sex with girls. Then we just made love one at a time. Right before we all fell asleep, I slowly was studying with love for Judy. She kissed me with such passion that I had never experienced from her before. "I love you so much," she whispered. "I love you too," I replied. We could hear a conversation between Peggy and Sean. It was almost the same as ours. This turned me and Judy on. A few minutes later, I was already asleep. Judy. Dawn was sleeping. I needed sleep too, but I couldn't help but listen to the sexy conversations between Peggy and her husband, Sean. "Do you two want to go to the guest room?" I asked quietly. "No, we'll sleep right here," Peggy said. "Sean, hug me and let's go to sleep. The sun is already rising." "Of course, dear." They both fell silent. I closed my eyes. The darkness of sleep slowly consumed me. Done. And so it was that she left me, but now she has returned, and our love for each other has become stronger and a little different than before. Why she left is still a mystery that Peggy tries to solve every Monday. I still want to know, but I realize I may never know, and I'm okay with that now. I love her. I will always love her. Sean hired Judy. She was an excellent archivist and could replace the secretary when needed. It was fun working together. We drove to and from work together. Sometimes we went home, sometimes we ended up at Peggy and Sean's, especially on the weekends. I really enjoyed watching Judy and Sean. She enjoyed watching me and Peggy too. We have a lot of fun with Sean and Peggy. Maybe we'll move on to other couples someday, but I think we're pretty happy with just each other if we ever decide not to have sex with Sean and Peggy anymore. And subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.